Anybody who cleans up the rubbish left behind by human beings deserves a medal on their own. It's not a nice job, but my word, they do a great job.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner Sharon Sutton.
I'm delighted to introduce as my guest on episode 2 of Island Influencers is Beach Buddies Isle of Man hero Bill Dale. Is there anything this guy can't do? If there's anyone who epitomizes where success comes from, it's Bill, who started Beach Buddies alone for years before the real scaling effect got traction. From one individual, him, and his dogs in 2007 to now having over 20% of the population of the Isle of Man involved so far. Bill and Beach Buddies are featured in January's National Geographic. Beach Buddies' objective is to provide a long-term, effective, efficient and sustainable operation using teams of volunteers to keep beaches and foreshores of the Isle of Man free from litter. And it survives entirely on donations and is sponsored by numerous companies, societies, organisations and individuals. There can't be many organisations of this size and scale directly having had such an impact that in 2016 the Isle of Man was given the prestigious honour of UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. And we're the only nation in the entire world to achieve this distinction. Beach Buddies was highlighted during the awards ceremony as its excellent example of beach cleaning methodology in 2019. And he was subsequently invited to become a member of the Isle of Man Government's Biosphere Committee, which promotes worldwide the Isle of Man Special Award. Annually, Beach Buddies runs approximately 200 beach cleaning events and collects around 200 tonnes of rubbish from beaches. So much so has the impact been that they've even noticed in the Isle of Whitthorn in the UK that there's just no plastic rushing up on their beaches anymore. So Beach Buddies also runs an ongoing education programme in all schools, which has become part of the curriculum. And Bill was awarded the British Empire Medal for services to the Manx marine environment in 2017. So welcome to Bill Dale. Bill, I'd like to welcome you to the Island Influencers podcast. And
thank you.
I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And it's not just because I'm a big fan of Beach Buddies and the fabulous job that you've done in putting the Isle of Man on the map for the right reasons, but I'm also quite curious to know what it takes to run such a fabulous organisation, so successful. And I think there are lessons there that our listeners can apply to their own organisations and businesses too. But firstly, I'd really like to congratulate you on your British Empire Medal awarded and your Timmel Award last year. Well, that's your inspiration. Yeah. So how did you? How was that?
That was an interesting day because I was born in St John's and the medal was obviously awarded at the Timmel ceremony in St John's Church. And in fact, I was a choir boy in the church as well. So on that day, I stood right in front of the choir on the same side, and Steve Roden very kindly said some very nice remarks. And I walked up the aisle and I remember thinking, I was like 14 years old the last time I was in the choir, and quite often there would be a ceremony of some sort and some old guy would walk up the aisle. And this time it was me.
Yeah, but not an old guy, right? So
No, I don't feel old. I feel about 25. I don't look 25, but I still feel 25 inside.
Well, yeah, it's a fantastic honour, and it was very nice. So thrilled that for all your work that's been awarded.
And very nice for the family too, and a lot of people from St John's said some very nice things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've covered it a little bit, but I mean, to kick off our conversation, really, I'd like to go back in time, if that's okay, and ask you about your life on the island and how you've ended up staying here.
Yeah, I was born, I suppose, in an era when people got to 17, 18, which a lot of my friends did. They went to university and decided to leave the island. And in fact, I didn't go to university because I wanted to get out of school quicker. And I went to sea when I was 17. And quite a lot of people went to sea because it was a Manx thing to do, the ocean's around us. So I went with BP tankers, but it wasn't my scene. And after my first trip, I came home on leave and there was a job advertised in the newspaper for a junior reporter at the Examiner.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? I was pretty good at English and I thought I quite liked that idea. And one of the things that got me the job was you had to keep a daily log while you were at sea. which the captain used to look at. And so you got into writing every day. And thank goodness I had that actual practical example of writing. And once the guy who interviewed me, the editor, Eric Kinraid, interviewed me, he read that and he said, "Do you want the job?" There and then.
Goodness.
Which was fantastic. So I suppose he saw that I could put a few words together. And so I sent a message to BP Tankers, "I'm not coming back." And that was the start of my journalistic career. And that, to be honest, that's still with me now. I still write and take photographs. And I've learned all the other aspects about graphic design and photography and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite interesting, really. Yeah. And it's stuck with me all my life, and I think it always will. I'm not a great book reader, but I read a lot, which sounds ridiculous. I read a lot of news for obvious reasons. And I hold a lot of completely useless information inside my head about a million things. I'm an expert on one or two things, but
and what are those?
Very few. Well, I suppose beach cleaning. I'm an expert on Liverpool Football Club.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I like to cook. I've read a lot of cookery books. I've read the Bible many times.
Gosh.
Many times. I'm fascinated by the Bible. I don't understand it all, but there's a lot of gems in there, and that's really interesting.
Is there a quote you want to share?
Do unto others as you do unto yourself. Think about others. I think that one thing, if everybody did that, end of all the world's problems.
I totally agree. Huh.
And some people are very cynical about the Bible, but there are some great phrases like that in there. Mm-hmm. And I'm not particularly a religious person, but I do have a faith of sorts. If people were to live their lives the way that Jesus did, we'd be all right.
We would, yeah. I
don't think there's anything bad about that. You know, people can be cynical about that phrase, but I think that would make a big difference. And if you look at the way the world is torn apart, and I mean, let's face it, the whole thing needs rewriting. We need to tear up whatever rule books we've got, start with a blank sheet and start again, because it's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, it looks like certain people in other parts of the world already are doing that. But
Yes. Yeah, let's not go there.
No, let's not. A question I like to ask people when I meet them is, what's your earliest memory of money? I mean, how was it for you growing up?
My dad ran the post office in St John's, and to earn a few pennies to spend to buy sweets or whatever you want to do in the shop, we were asked to take the day's mail in a mail bag, which used to be collected at the top of the road by the bus. And then it would taken to Douglas and put on the boat to go to Liverpool. So we got 3 old pence for that. And I always remember thinking, if you collected a few of those, then you'd have a shilling. And then if you collected a few more, you had 2 and 6. And then I could buy a fishing rod to go fishing. Yeah. So, yeah, that was my first introduction to money. I've never been that bothered about money. I've never been very successful at making any. And I've sort of always put it on the back shelf. I suppose that's a strange thing to do and to say even, because it's obviously a necessity in life.
Yeah.
And I've struggled for many, many years. I had next to nothing, you know. Even the newspaper business didn't pay very well. Still doesn't.
Well, most of our seasoned listeners, or say the listener, will probably remember you from your newspaper editor days. And
yes.
You've done a lot of newspaper editing.
Yes.
Do you think that, has that discipline of keeping a diary entry every day, has that stayed with you till now? You still do that?
I was only looking the other day for a diary, and I found one from, must be 20, 25 years ago, but they are all at home somewhere. Mm-hmm. I live my day by the diary, a written diary. And I've got a fairly big one these days.
I'm sure.
Giant A4 size. And in fact, for a little while, I was keeping 2 diaries, one for my business work and newspapers and whatever, and one for Beach Buddies, but that doesn't work, so I've got the whole lot in one now.
Yeah.
But yeah, diary makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I was listening to a webinar last week, and the guy said that the way to success is to, if you want to get into blogging, is to record just things of interest to you. Writer's block is one of the worst curses, I suppose, and
yes,
that's a good method to...
And photography's good too. I mean, the great thing today is everybody's got a phone, so they're taking pictures left, right and centre, you know. It doesn't enhance the quality of photography. I think people are settling now for just pictures as a record of events. But over the years, I mean, I've arrived today with 2 cameras in the car, and I carry a camera, so there's a log of life going on with your camera. as well as the diary. And I've got, gosh, how many photographs now? I mean, now that's gone digital, you can just take as many as you like as well. So,
not the film costs. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe how much I used to spend on film.
No, I wouldn't.
Unbelievable. £10,000 a year.
That's why you had no money.
Yeah, but yes. Yes. And then people wouldn't pay you. Yeah. So that's probably, that's got a lot to do with it. Yeah. That's happened a few times.
I think I may know the answer to this one. But maybe not. Of all the things you've done throughout your life, what thing has given you the most fulfilment? What are you most proud of?
Birth of my daughter.
Oh.
Without any question. Number one, always will be. Mm-hmm. And then the birth of my granddaughter. I think that, we can talk about what we've all done with our lives and how much money we've made and how successful we've been and what we've done and where we've been and all the places we've been to, but nothing matters more than children. And that has been a focus of my life ever since she's been around. And it's just that is the only answer to that question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say the same?
I would. I definitely would. Yeah,
I've seen you with your family, and I would agree.
Yeah, it's a meaning of life right there.
Absolutely, that's it, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. So, what do you do to relax when you're not organising beach cleans?
I do like to walk. I've started walking mountains the last few years. I mean, I always used to do lots of walking when I had the dogs. Sadly, all the dogs have gone, and a dog is a key to walking. Mm-hmm. So, and that's how Beachbody started, was walking on the beach. But when you have dogs, you have to walk them. I have to say now that I don't have any, I don't walk as much as I used to because there's no, real need to get out, especially on, like freezing cold day like today. Mm-hmm. Just avoid it, but because there's no need to. You don't have to walk your cats. So, yeah, walking. I still like taking photographs. I still get a kick out of photographs. I still enjoy writing, and I think one of the reasons why I don't read books is while I'm reading the book, I feel like I need to be sorting out the punctuation and the grammar and sometimes the spelling, but certainly the grammar and the punctuation. And I find myself editing it as I'm going along, and I cannot concentrate on the meaning of what the book is about. And so that drives me crazy. That's one of the reasons why I don't read books, because I have to say most people's grammar is awful.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, they say that in most people there is a book. How about you? Do you fancy writing a book?
I've started one just this last couple of years.
Have you? And what's it about? Can I ask? Basically
about what's happened with the beach cleaning, because that's the thing that everybody now thinks about me. They think about me as strangely, some people call me the world's expert in beach cleaning. How weird is that? But if that is the case...
Pretty accurate, I'd say.
Well, say I am just somebody who knows a fair bit about this subject, then I thought to myself, I'm getting on in years. Maybe this is the time to write all this down to show people how it works, and also to show them the story. And there's some quite funny and interesting things happened along the way. There was a couple of spiritual things happened along the way, which just made the whole thing very interesting as well. And I think, too, the development of it, how it's now... I don't spend much time cleaning beaches at all. I spend almost all my time in schools educating children, because that is the whole key to this. Because if you don't drop rubbish in the street in the first place, anywhere, thousands of miles from the beach, then it doesn't go down a drain in a river out to sea and on a beach, because that's 90% of where it's coming from. That is the key to the whole thing, is to stop people, everybody, not just children, stop chucking stuff in the street. That ends the problem. Mm-hmm. And it looks to me as if nobody else in the world is saying that, and I am staggered, because that is the answer.
Do you think retailers have a bit of a part to play in this?
I think that they're certainly coming into it very quickly. I had a meeting with Robinsons very recently, last week or so, and they are very keen to start some new initiatives in the Isle of Man, which will help to spread that word, because they're conscious that the packaging that their suppliers give them are containing things like plastic and polystyrene and poor materials. So
fast food wrappers are very easily identifiable, aren't they?
The fast food industry is probably causing most of the problem. Yeah. And I'm going to them at the moment, and throughout 2020 I'm going to speak to them all about trying to change. Let the Isle of Man set another example. Why not? Mm-hmm. We can do that in a place like this.
I don't doubt you. So when's the book coming out?
Give me a year or so. I've got all the chapters started. Some unfinished. Say, I don't know, maybe it's about 1/3 done, something like that.
That's it sounds very exciting. I'll certainly be buying a copy.
We'll see.
So tell me, what do you think are the best things about living on the Isle of Man?
I feel very fortunate to have been born here. My mum and dad were brought up in Liverpool, born in Liverpool,
yes.
and they survived the Second World War, and Liverpool got blitzed in the Second World War. And I was born a few years after they came here, 7 years after the end of the Second World War, and they must have thought they died and gone to heaven. I can't ever remember not being on the beach, because you can imagine they came from that terrible situation and came to live in the Isle of Man. And then we went to places like Ballaugh and the Len and Blue Point in particular, Blue Point and Smale, and there was nobody on the beach. Nobody. We were the only ones there. You know, I mean, they must have thought the Isle of Man people were crazy, because it was on their doorstep and they weren't even using it. And to some extent, I think that now, because you could go to the beach, like a couple of days ago, it was a beautiful day. And I went for a walk down at Blue Point, and I saw one other person in about 5 or 6 miles. I don't understand that, because it's fantastic. It's the most beautiful piece of coastline. But maybe you don't really want hundreds of people down there either. And I think being brought up in St John's was a nice place. It's nice to be brought up in the countryside. A very good friend of mine, his mother was really good at identifying names of flowers, and she knew the Manx names of them as well. That's David Fisher's mother, okay. David and Paul Fisher's mother, Evelyn. And she knew the name of the flowers in Manx, and she knew lots of the names of the wildflowers in particular. And that was really interesting. So that stays with you all your life.
Oh,
and
sure.
You just learn to live alongside nature. We used to go playing what we called ice hockey on the frozen pond down, which is where St John's School now is. It used to be called the Sand Pit.
Okay.
And it had about 2 foot of water, and it seemed to freeze every winter. And so that was the centre of our attraction. Then in the summertime, we would make rafts out of oil barrels and goodness knows what we could find. So that sort of free life. I mean, the
you wouldn't have got away with it these days. You really hold off.
These days, the children want to go to their bedroom and get on onto an iPad. Mm-hmm. My mother was forever coming outside trying to get us to come in. We had no interest in being inside. And of course, I suppose in those days, my bedroom was freezing. So who wanted to be in a bedroom when you could be outside and be freezing anyway? Yes.
Yes, we still live in a house like that. Tell me, what do you think the main challenges are that the Isle of Man faces? I mean, it's great to influence from a small perspective in that you can have a massive effect on what you've done and seen happening with Beach Buddies, but what are our main challenges, do you think?
I think how political do you want me to be?
Well, we can edit anything. So.
Yeah. No, I'd rather you didn't, to be honest, because I think you've got to speak from the heart. Over the years, I think we've lost touch between government and the people to some extent. And that's not just the Isle of Man, that's everywhere. If you look at the way that, for instance, the EU legislates with massive rule. I mean, all this health and safety nonsense and all that sort of stuff came out of the EU originally. And you look at the rule books on that. I mean, it's just beyond pathetic, most of it. And to some extent, I think the world has been dumbed down by governments saying that they're going to take control of pretty much everything in your life. And therefore, you don't have to make a decision. Let them make the decision. And you know what? I think the problem with litter in the streets and ending up on beaches, a lot of that has got to do with the fact that the people have been dumbed down to think that it's not their responsibility. Somebody else will pick it up. Exactly. And that, I think, is where... And that's that's one subject. You think about everything. The decision is now supposedly, and it is, going to be made by somebody in government. But then they can't make a decision. Then they get consultants in and pay consultants. And then something goes wrong, but the consultants never get in any trouble. They get paid huge amounts of money. The system's absolutely screwed up. We need to just take a step back to about 20, 30 years ago, and let's all just use some common sense, because that is totally lacking. Yeah. And I don't just mean in government. It means everybody is just... I think people had pretty much given up that they're never going to be able to make any changes. And that's the one thing that Beach Buddies has done. It's empowered people to think that actually you don't need to go to government to say, I'm going to clean up a beach. Okay, I think if they were running it, you would find there would be a million health and safety reasons not to do it. I think we've all got to grow up, for goodness sake. I mean, when you were a child, when I fell over and you bashed your knee, your mum would say, "Oh, how did you do that, you idiot?"
Don't do that again.
Exactly. And there you go. There's the answer.
TCP.
Yeah, exactly. That was the answer. I mean, it was just use simple common sense. My mother was forever saying to me, "Just use your common sense. What's wrong with that?" Yeah. And I think we've lost touch with that connection. That I seem to remember when we were children that the local MHK was really highly respected and was considered to be somebody who had common sense, who would make good decisions, which would be good for everybody. Not anymore. And when you look at what's happening across the Atlantic Ocean with the man in the White House, I mean, there's an example of how, to some extent, the media is getting back what it's deserved for quite some time, because they've been very cynical of, I mean, Obama was a good president and he went through the mill with these guys, and now we've ended up with this guy, and who knows what's going to happen next. I mean, he's capable of anything, this fella.
Yeah, it is a worry. But I mean, going back to your profession of journalism, the power of journalism and fake news, if you like, these days, because it's so easy to get out headlines of a negative nature. And of course, I think humans seem to be predisposed to being negative, that maybe we want new and exciting and bad stuff.
But that's why I got out of mainstream journalism.
Yeah.
I was managing director of the Manx Independent. I had a good salary. That was about the only time in my life I had a decent salary. I had a car and expenses, and there was some travel to London now and again for meetings and things, for business meetings. And I suppose a lot of people would think, he's reached the top of where he could be. And I suppose at that time, that's where I was.
Yeah.
And then I woke up I didn't wake up one morning. I'd been thinking about it for a long time. And I just went to the directors and I said, I know you're not going to like this, but I'm getting out of this. And most of it was, all of it was because you could see the way that journalism was going. The national newspapers were completely concentrated on negativity. It was all about hammering footballers and film stars and musicians and anybody, politicians. Just take them all down, even the respected newspapers. And then now and again I would give a talk about journalism, say at the college or a school, and number one question every time, hands up anybody who believes everything they read in a newspaper. And I did that hundreds and hundreds of times, and nobody ever put their hand up.
That's amazing.
So therefore, there you go. And I thought to myself, if that's what the ordinary young people think, intelligent young people think, what the hell am I doing in this game? I'm getting out.
I suppose somebody would and they would repeat the headline, and because it comes not from the headline but from somebody else that they know and trust. Maybe that's how it.
Yes, but I think that when I was a young journalist, the entire teaching from the editor and all the other journalists, people like Terry Kringle and Alan Bell, who are absolutely top-notch journalists, is that you get your facts right. You don't have to agree with them, but get your facts right and make sure that you can back it up. Don't dream something up because you think it's a good idea. And that was what a great lesson, and it teaches you a balance as well. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you had to write a story and you didn't like the content of the story because it didn't really, it wasn't for me, but that's the way it was because it was the truth. And I don't think that's the case, that local newspapers lost touch. But it's all about, I think, the way that the media in general, and this is television, radio and newspapers, it's just all gone down the pan in the last 20, 30 years. I'm glad I wasn't a part of the mainstream journalism. No,
but you've been part of the positive swing and the regular, the growth of Beach Buddies has grown and grown and grown, and that's all positive reinforcement of messages, so maybe that's...
Yeah, but that's me, you see.
It is.
And that's my family. My dad was like that. My mum was less like that, but, she was a positive thinker as well. And I think when we were brought up, we were taught to see the good side in things and rather than the bad. And, there are always going to be nutcases about and, bad things do happen.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
I've dealt with a few over the years and you can't really cope with that because it's inflicted on you. But, and maybe going back to having to go to church. we had to go to church from Sunday school until we were about 15, and then you made your own decision, and pretty much everybody left the church at that time. But I don't think that's a bad grounding, really, because it gives you a sort of an idea of what everybody's talking about when they talk about the world's problems. So
consequences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so most of our seasoned listeners will remember you from your newspaper editor days when you were quite the entrepreneur. So what solutions and opportunities can you see? What would you do if you were, say, a government minister? What does good look like, do you think?
I think we need to think about every member of society. I think we've stopped doing that for a little while. Okay, there are hangers-on and people who are wasters, and you're always going to have those. But there is a lot of people around who haven't got a lot. And the Isle of Man portrays this image that, here we are, and you meet them. I'm sure you'll have met them yourself on your travels. I remember I was in somewhere in the States, and I said I was from the Isle of Man. I said, "Oh yeah, that's the place where everybody's a millionaire."
Oh yeah, the tax haven.
Yeah, you're a tax haven. Therefore, you don't pay any income tax. You keep all your wages, and you must have loads of money. And property's, the fallacy, the property's cheap. And the reality is that a good chunk of the people in the Isle of Man, I would say probably 50%, are just scraping by. Mm-hmm. And there are some people at the very top, and I don't like this tax cap thing, because they've already found a way around not even paying the tax cap. That is immoral as far as I'm concerned. Let's face it, all these guys were paying, 40% tax if they were living in the UK, something like that, maybe a bit less. And they come to the Isle of Man and suddenly they find themselves paying supposedly £120,000 a year, but they've actually found a way not to pay that. So I don't know how that hangs in their heads, Mm-hmm. I don't really understand that. And here we are with a multi-billion pound black hole supposedly in the public sector pension pot. I mean, doesn't add up.
No.
And
so
we're going to kill ourselves if we carry on going like this. We need to be better. If I was chief minister, the first thing I would do would say, I'm going to introduce policies which are good for everybody. Not policies as just for people to expand in business or people who want to be entrepreneurs or whatever. Just think about every single person and try and balance it out. And for goodness sake, stop wasting money on things like, why do we always have to buy brand new buses? I mean, they're an unbelievable amount of money. And we've got thousands. There's nobody in them, number one, and they're all over the place. I mean, we need to cut a few corners. Like vehicles. Like government vehicles. I mean, these are just simple savings. Rather than going out and buying a brand new one and making sure that you replace it every 5 years or whatever the policy is. I'm not sure what that is. I for years I was struggling on buying a vehicle for about £500 a year to keep me going.
Yeah, sure.
When things were tight, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Things are tight now. What are we doing? Spending millions of pounds on a promenade. We're spending millions. How many people are in Britain at this moment thinking, wow, I can't wait to see Douglas Promenade finished because I'm going to go over and have a look at it.
Yeah, go on a horse tram.
Yeah, anyway, I better calm down now.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, me too. Yeah, okay. Well, but for any aspiring business owners and entrepreneurs, what would be your number one business tip?
I like green initiatives these days. I think there's a lot more of those around, and I think people understand those.
Greta is your best friend.
Well, I like her, yeah.
She's great.
She has a presence, doesn't she?
She does.
When she speaks, she's one of those people that you find that you cannot stop listening to her. She also has a very strong appearance for a 13-year-old girl, Somebody bought me her book for Christmas. My daughter bought me her book for Christmas, and it's quite interesting. I'm not 100% sure she wrote it. It doesn't look like all the words of a 13-year-old, but who cares? No. The meaning is there, and she will have read through it. And I think she's good. So
what sort of way would you be green? Let's say you're a community organisation, a bit like Beach Buddies, but how would you do that?
I think the renewable energy area is something that everybody should be looking at. And I think, the government's announced plans to tackle carbon emissions and get involved with the Climate Change Coalition, which is a really good group. And we tend to waste a lot of money in government, and I think it's, ordinary people, particularly those who haven't got much money, should be given a chance to do things with their homes, like simple things like insulation and double glazing and ground source heat pumps.
They're fantastic, aren't they?
But
yeah.
they're very expensive at the moment. But then again, all technology was extremely expensive at one time. I remember a mobile phone when they first came out. They were an unbelievable amount of money, and it was the thing like a brick.
Yes, I remember. I do.
And now a mobile phone, you can get a dead cheap one, and it works
unless it's
very well. Well, yeah, I've got one of those too. Yeah. So on that basis, if there's a massive demand for these things, and electric cars as well, I do know that there was a story about the Isle of Man potentially being flooded with cheap, small electric cars as a test bed. And I thought that's a really good test because we've got lots of hills.
We have, and we've also got
good
it's
test.
A small place. You're not going too far from a charger, are you?
And it's captive, yeah. So, I would like to see more investment, business investment in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We've gone down the route of, obviously, finance for a very long time and financial management. And, we do now rely on it. Our headline sponsor, Film Capital, is that's the game that they're in, and they do an extremely good job.
Oh, that's great. So you need a decent sponsor or a decent partner in what you're doing with in your community.
And that's good that those guys are seeing that, like Robinsons are going to help us as well. And the Scheinberg family have been very generous to us by funding the employment of a part-time member of staff, our first and only member of staff at the moment. So, that it's good that that money is spinning around a little bit, and we're getting a little bit of it.
It's interesting. It's a partnership between second and third sector in that respect.
That's right.
Private and charity sector.
Does the Isle of Man? I think it has the reputation of that as individuals, as by population, we donate more money to charity than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, we have more charities as well. I think there's something like over 600 charities.
I think there's more than that.
Is there?
Yeah, it's a very big number. Yeah,
it's quite a lot per head.
So people do think about those sort of things, but in terms of some companies don't do anything.
So we could all do a lot more.
And some of these very rich individuals don't do anything. We've got something special with Beach Buddies, but there's lots more deserving charities than us. Health charities, cancer and all sorts of things, and child welfare and stuff like that.
And live at home. These
that's a really good one.
Social care.
Yeah,
that's we've got a bit of a time bomb heading for us, haven't we?
It is at the minute. Yeah.
So, what have you got planned next, apart from the book?
Right. Okay. I can tell you about the schemes. I can't tell you the names of the companies that's looking at it. One scheme that is a long way down the line is and I've spoken to them, and we've got a verbal agreement that we go to all the RNLI stations around the British Isles and use that as a base to have a joint venture between the RNLI and Beach Buddies for beach cleaning, which will cover the entire coast of Britain. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, of course.
Because the RNLI is already there.
This came from here, didn't it? Wasn't it?
Yeah. We need obviously a sponsor to pay for things like litter pickers, but you're looking at a few £100 for each branch, and there's I think it's about 260 or 70 branches. A big sponsor, and that's why I can't give you the names, because I'm talking to two of the biggest names you can possibly think of.
Okay.
And if that happens, in fact, only a couple of days ago, I wrote to the Prime Minister to ask him, would he endorse a project like that? And by sheer chance, on Saturday, it won't be because he read my letter, but on Saturday in Daily Mail, he announced that he wanted to basically kickstart a Clean Up Britain campaign. I'm sure he will read my letter. Once he sees that and sees that we're actually well down the line doing something like that, who knows? So that's one thing that we're on to.
Great.
There has been an announcement from UNESCO, which is about to go worldwide. I spoke at their conference in the Euromap conference, which is the Biosphere conference.
Biosphere conference, yes.
In Dublin last March, and I made a proposal at the end of that, because I thought at the end of it all, we were all saying, nice to meet you and best of luck when you go back home. And I said to them, listen, why don't we actually come up with an idea rather than just see you again in 2 years' time when the next conference happens? Why don't we come up with a project? And I said, you've seen what we do in the Isle of Man. Why don't we make a proposal that UNESCO follows what Beach Buddies has done, because it's simple, it engages with the community, it includes government, it includes everybody, schools, education, the whole thing. They said, okay, let's do that. And it was put to the conference on the final day. I had to leave to get on a flight in the morning. So apparently it was put there, but it didn't go any further. And I thought, well, nothing's going to happen. And that was March last year. In November, I got a message and the words that I had given them were included in a press release to say that they like the idea. They've now decided they want to do it, and it's going to happen in 701 biospheres in 124 countries. I mean, that will be the world's biggest ever beach. It's not beach cleaning. It's about, because the biospheres are not all on beaches.
No.
This is about community cleanups.
Yeah.
So it's beaches and it's glens and it's rivers and plantations and roads and streets and parks and everywhere.
Initiative.
And that will be the biggest cleanup operation ever in the world. How cool is that?
That's pretty amazing. That's God.
And all I did one day was go for a walk on the beach with my dogs.
I know,
and look at what happened.
I know.
Who would have ever thought something like that could happen?
And
there's a few other little schemes on the go as well. I'm trying to help people set up branches because of the publicity. The National Geographic,
the article that this week I was going to say that's phenomenal.
That's 60 million online readers. It's an online article, this.
Yeah.
60 million online readers.
It's been shared so many times in local, and the reach is
well, a Facebook page locally has had 44,000 hits looking at it this morning.
Goodness me.
I mean, is that good? I
think that's pretty good, yeah.
I think it is,
I think it's pretty good, Bill.
Yeah. Well, we've only got, how many homes now, man?
Oh, I don't know.
About 28,000, is it something like that? So
but
that's hitting a lot of people. So on that basis... I also have to get my head around the fact that this is now massive. This wasn't a plan. My plan was just to clean up one beach at Balaf. And then I thought for a few years, to be honest, I ran it on my own for a few years because I didn't really want to tell anybody that I was a bin man at the weekend. And that's what I was doing with my life. You know, there was a bit of a stigma attached to it because I remember my maths teacher said to me one day, Dale, if you don't book your ideas up, you'll end up being a bin man.
How to make it a positive experience.
It was but what he was doing was insulting me.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a nasty piece of work, this guy.
Dear.
But he thought the bin man was the lowest of the low. But I have to tell you, I've got the utmost respect for the guys who do that. That is, and ladies, it's not just fellas. Anybody who cleans up the rubbish left behind by human beings deserves a medal on their own. It's not a nice job, but my word, they do a great job. So on that basis, I'm very pleased and proud to say that I clean up now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And after 5 years of doing it, sort of keeping it under the radar, I thought, this is impossible task for one person. So let's see if anybody else is out there. And here we are, 15,000 volunteers later.
It's incredible. Phenomenal. It goes right back to what you said at the beginning about personal accountability and responsibility and it being down to somebody else to pick it up. You've motivated everybody to do their own bit.
That's right.
So congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, that's the one thing I have achieved, yeah. It is a team, though.
Yeah.
It's not a one-man show, this. You've got to understand that this doesn't work unless the volunteers get involved. If I'd carried on just on my own, I would still be scratching around and not achieving too much and be considered the oddball eccentric. But now, because everybody else is involved, what I realised was that I was a bit cynical, really, to be honest, about the human race for a while because I didn't think anybody particular. I thought I was a bit of a one-off, but now I realise that there's millions of people like me around the world, hundreds of millions of people like me.
All they need is just somebody like you to...
It just needs a kickstart.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's worked here, so it's obviously going to work anywhere else. Because, it's not easy to motivate Manx people sometimes. You know what it's like. We're all a bit sort of reserved and, not really going to stick your head above the parapet, But with this, it's worked. And I think and it's also encouraged other initiatives as well. There's the 3 pieces of plastic, and then there's the people who go around cleaning up in their glens and parks and things, and then the schools have cleaned up around their own areas, and you see people I have no idea who they are walking down the street picking up rubbish with a bag. I mean, that never happened before.
No, it didn't.
It's broken. I think what's happened is broken the stigma.
Yeah.
And that was the mindset changing point. Yeah, that was the big difference.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing. So, that was a big answer to number.
Sorry.
That's great. So, are there any books you've read recently? You said you didn't read books, but I mean, sources of inspiration.
My sources of inspiration, not particularly books, but the information that you can pick up on places like National Geographic. And there are a lot of very good environmental websites. There's some good programs on the TV at the moment. I mean, people are picking up on this issue and other issues at the moment.
Related.
And I'm very interested in the global warming debate, and how I think the Climate Change Coalition, the Isle of Man, is trying to do a really good job. I'm really interested in all that sort of stuff. So I'm following a lot of articles online mostly, and a lot of people are sending them to me as well, which is good.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if people wanted to find out those sources, where would they be able to find? Have you posted links to them on a page anywhere? Or
I produced a magazine last year. I don't know if you saw it, called Our Island, which is an environment magazine, and
is it still available?
It is, and there's a new one coming out in April.
Right.
So it looks as if it's going to be once a year. And the whole thing was concentrating on not just what's happening in the Isle of Man, but initiatives all over the place. The Lisbonan program about the plastics in Thailand and these places, which came out about a year ago. I included a piece on that. And then David Attenborough is always writing about these things. And there was programs. So I've clipped little bits of information from, and it gives it authenticity.
Well, if you give me details of that, I can put them in the show notes.
Absolutely.
As to how people would be able to get them. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where can people go to read more about you and Beach Buddies? It's a Facebook page, is that right?
There is a Facebook page, which is good, but we're trying to shift all the visiting traffic towards our website, beachbuddies.net, because that's a much more accessible platform, I think, too. I don't know about the security or whatever, but I always feel more secure going onto a website than you do looking at a Facebook page. And also, social media pages tend to get the nutcases on as well, and that drives me mad. These just people who just want to be negative, and I'm not interested in that. So the website is completely controllable, because whatever goes on there is mine.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas on a Facebook page, you can end up with all sorts of silly comments and stuff, So, yeah, but Facebook's been good for us. Yeah. My daughter's very good at all these other things that I'm not so good at.
So she helps you with that, does she?
She's great at that. Yeah. She does all the other ones, like Snapchat and Instagram. And as the generations change, then, they reject the technology of the previous one. So, and something new will come along for my granddaughter as well. So hopefully she will get the bug as well. She has already. She's really keen too. So
perfect.
Hopefully I've created a legacy. So if anything, I get knocked over by a bus, then I have my daughter Rosanna and Yasmin, my granddaughter.
One of those new government ones. Okay, well, we'll put all those details in the show notes so that listeners will be able to
no problem,
connect it with that. Well, thank you so much, Bill. It's been a real pleasure and an honour to speak to you today.
You're very welcome, Sharon. It's been nice to have a nice, really interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.